Hello, and welcome to Assembly TV studio. My name is Riina Nieminen, and I will be hosting Fireside Chat today. Today, I have my guest, Jon Hare here.
Hello.
Welcome.
Hi, thanks. Nice to be here.
So, you are the CEO of Tower Studios Ltd.
Yes.
What Tower Studios Ltd do as an organization?
Okay, so I've been making games a long time. I started making games in 1985, and with a company called Sensible Software. So we had a number of famous games from the old times with this company, and we sold that in 1999. And I've done various bits of consulting, but Tower Studios Limited, Ltd, was set out, it's like OY in OY in Finnish, it's the LTD's English equivalent, yeah? So initially it was set up as a mobile games, old mobile games on Nokia's as a developer. So myself and two guys from a team called the Bitmap Brothers that are also a famous company like Sensible Software. We set a company up with three of us to make those old mobile games. But the market was terrible with those old mobile games. There wasn't much money in it compared to what we were used to. You couldn't make original games on it, so we stopped running it. And then we were all doing consulting. And then basically in 2008, when the stock market crash happened, I had three major clients as consultants for game design consulting mostly, and a bit of business. And they all ran out of money in the same week. So I lost all my business I'd spent like about 6 years putting together. So I decided to just pick up Tower Studios again on my own. My two friends were busy doing other stuff, so I just took the whole company over myself. And what we've done with Tower Studios since is develop games and sometimes self-publish, sometimes publish with other people. But always working with other development companies. So Tower as a company, I'm a game designer and a business person, direction, the business, sometimes a bit of production, a bit of team leadership, but basically working with development partners and working with publishing partners. So I've worked with one team in the UK on the first thing I did, which was a small app, like a messenger kind of app. And then I worked with a Polish company called Vivid Games. We did 3 games. The best known is Speedball 2 Evolution, which was a remake of an old Bitmap Brothers game, which did actually well for us on mobiles and on iPad, on Mac, and PlayStation Plus. And then we did a game called Word Explorer, which was one of my original games. But then in the last 3 years, almost now, I've been working with a company called Combo Breaker, who are based here in Helsinki. So my current game, Sociable Soccer, I'm working with Combo Breaker, and actually I'm now part of the company as well. So we're kind of like co-companies right now. That's why I'm here, basically.
Yeah, you have a long history as a game designer. How did this all start? You said that your second company, the Tower Studios, started with mobile games. What about the first one?
The first one, so this was in 1986. So if we go to 85, if you want the history, so before 85, I met a guy from school when I was 15 in my maths class, and we became friends, and we started to play music together and write music in a band together.
Oh, what did you study?
I was studying, at that time, well, all of the subjects when I was very young, because I was still in this school, we used to do all of them. But when I went to college, I studied theatre design, and I studied English, and I studied maths, but I found the maths too hard. It was really easy at the basic level and really hard when it went up the next step for me. So I changed from maths to drama because it went with the theatre design. But actually, unfortunately, I never finished the course. I was too determined to try and write my own music with my friend and us to go out. And I told my father, it's okay, we're going to buy a van and we're going to go and play as a band and we'll be fine. And actually, we had fun making the music. We made no money and we didn't do much touring. So. But we started to write software. My friend had studied computer studies, and I'd studied more art subjects. So we ended up making games together. He was the programmer, I was the artist, and we got a job with a local company. Our company, Sensible Software. So that's quite a famous company. I mean, we had about 7 #1 hits with Sensible Software in that time, from between 1985 and 99. And yeah, but we started off on the very first game I made was on a ZX81, which was actually black and white. It wasn't even a color thing.
What was the idea in that game?
It wasn't really an original game. That particular game, where it was a wizard throwing some things at some dragons, but it was a copy. Then we did a game called Twister, and we got commissioned by a company to do it, but they wanted a game where someone threw discs, and they wanted this woman with big breasts to be flying around in the sky, and then whatever else we wanted. So we did that. And then we did a conversion of another game, and then we did our first original game called Parallax, which was just a spaceship flying around, trying not to get killed by these big metal crunchy things. Yeah.
So from a music man to a game developer, how come? Have you always been interested in games, or you studied first drama and then you went to do music and then suddenly game design?
Well, to me, it's all part of the same thing. So I've been designing games since I was 5 years old. When I was a young child, you know, I've made a lot of football games in my life. But the first football game I ever designed, I was 5. And I used to play Subbuteo with my father. You know, this game where you flick players on the floor. Do you know this?
I'm not sure.
It's an old game, because remember, there was no computer games when I was a child. I was born in 1966. So we didn't have computer games. So there was like, you put this piece of felt on the floor with the football pitch marked on it, and you have these plastic players and you flick them around. I used to love it because I'm a big football fan. So the first game I invented when I was 5 was 5 teddy bears versus 5 rabbits and a ping pong ball and 2 goals, and just kicking it around the floor, annoying my mother, you know, in the middle of the hallway. But yeah, and then making all sorts of games up with my sister, and I've been doing that since I was a really young child. So, you know, before computer games. So, yeah, and I guess I've always liked writing poetry when I was a young kid, and then getting into writing music and on stage is an amateur actor, but a good one. So I grew up around good quality amateur theatres, if you like. So I've always been comfortable with those creative arts as a lump. And I'd have happily been a professional musician, but it's harder to do. And we were successful making games, so the games is what it was, yeah.
So was the start pretty easy, or was there some difficulties when you started building games?
In those days, so when we first started in 1985, the industry was very, very new. So in the UK, there were lots of, we were literally did work out of my friend's spare bedroom, his dad's spare bedroom in his house. Like, it had Flintstones wallpaper on the wall. That's where we started our office. So in those days, it was easy to start and quite easy to get a contract. You know, our first day ever of business, we took our game Parallax on the disc, took a train up to the top publisher in the country called, in Manchester, called Ocean Software, and we got a deal that day. We sat down in the office, showed him the game. The CEO, who's this really scary business guy, and we're like 2 19-year-old kids, he said, "The guys say your game is good. Here's a contract for £5,000. Here's a cheque for £1,000. Do you want to sign?" Yeah, first day of business. You try doing that now. That's the big difference now, is that there's so many. In those days, the companies needed good game makers, and there weren't so many people who were doing it, and there was a big appetite for it. Whereas now you've got a flip side around. You've got a lot of people wanting to make games, but the market doesn't really need those games at the moment. You know, it's maybe hard for people to understand the volume of it, but there's 400 games a day coming out in the App Store right now.
Oh, yeah.
As if you go back to the Amiga times, 92 or 2002 on PlayStation 2, there were 3 games per day. Now there's 400. And the important thing is, in those old days, no one said, we need more games. So we've ended up with this huge quantity of many copies of games. And that wasn't the problem in the old days. And the volume of games has led to it being harder to make money from them. So it's like that's what's happened. That's why we've got a change now, yeah.
Yeah. And you have been doing this for over 30 years.
Yeah.
And you're one of the Europe's best known creators a lot.
Well, there's a few of us, yeah.
What kind of works have been your favorites, or what do you like to do? What kind of games?
Which games? What from our? You mean from our games?
Yeah, from your
Okay,
games.
so the most well-known games would be Sensible Soccer, Cannon Fodder, Whizball, Megalomania, WizKid, Microprose Soccer, in that order, kind of order. But generally, the three ones best known are Sensible Soccer, Cannon Fodder, and Whizball. So Sensible Soccer and Cannon Fodder were on the 16-bit machines like the Commodore Amiga, the Atari ST, and the 8-bit. The Whizball was an 8-bit game on the Commodore 64. So these are all like mostly up to the mid-90s, up to about 94. Yeah.
And which one did you like to do?
Personally, well, we did lots of games I've liked. So I loved making WizKid. It was a crazy game running around, very psychedelic kind of game. I did with my friend Chris, I set the company up with. I love Sensible Soccer because it's been a great game and made me a lot of money as well. So I'm very happy with that. Cannon Fodder I'm very pleased with. Megalomania I'm very proud of as one of the first God games. Even games that have not come out, we made a game called Sex, Drugs and Rock and Roll. It was very innovative. I enjoyed that very much. Made a lot of music for that one actually. So we tried to push music into games towards the end of Sensible Software. But you know, you like them all in a different way. And by the end of the game when you're making it, you normally hate it and you just want it finished and you hate the bugs in it, and you know your perception as a maker is different from the players. Yeah. But then afterwards, when it's all done, then you can enjoy it again. That's how it works.
And what is the best part when you're developing a game? What is what you are waiting for? Like.
Oh, good question. I think it's nice to put an initial idea together, and it's very exciting. Especially when it's really fast and there's no code involved, which slows everything down. It's just literally hammering out great ideas. And then probably the best bit is if you've got some key ideas of something and then it actually physically really works in the game. Because games work like they go through these very slow bits of like 3 months of nothing, seemingly, often when there's big basic coding being done in the background. I'm not a coder, I'm a designer, and I used to do all the graphics for 7 years in our games. So I'm used to like having to wait for programmers. It's like sitting at a bus stop for a bus that doesn't come. After that, you can tune the bit you've been waiting to be coded, and then sometimes you get that jump. You get that eureka moment. Yes, it works, you know. So.
And that is the greatest feeling.
Yeah, when you feel the game jump up. See, what happens with games is really interesting. You start off with an idea, then you write some documentation down normally. And everyone's working from the documentation in these lists. But then there's a point where it twists around, and suddenly the game is talking to you and saying, I need this. Like, this bit is rubbish. It needs to change. We need to add something here. You know, that bit needs to go. You know, we used to say at Sensible, what you throw away on the game is as important as what you keep. So you've got to start reacting around what the game needs. You know, anyone who's arranged music would know that as well. Like you can hear what's missing or what's too much, and you change it. So it's a bit like that with the game. Just the whole process is much slower.
Yeah, like the game starts to have its own brain, and you have to start to serve it.
You have a feeling for it. It's like if you were making a piece of music, and then you heard that the drums are much too loud, you would turn them down, or something's missing. Should we try adding some cello here or whatever? So the game is the same. You know when actually the menu system is too clumsy, we can't get around it, or that thing's too big, or all these things are white, they all look the same, or this level's too hard, or whatever it might be. You should be able to feel what your game needs. Yeah.
And is there some difference when you make mobile games? Is it faster or harder, or?
Depends on the type of mobile game you're making. If you make a very quick, light game, you know, like a Flappy Bird game is the best example, you know, or a Doodle Jump kind of game, can be quite fast. Even games like Candy Crush, which looks simple, the level design is brilliant in Candy Crush. That's why it's such a great game. And the attention to detail in the presentation is so good. Although in theory it looks simple, in practice when you break it down, I mean, I've done this exercise, I've been teaching in universities, different students, mostly in London, a bit in Cambridge, about game designs. And one of the exercises I get them to do, it's about production actually, is okay, let's take a game we all know. So we go Angry Birds or Candy Crush normally, they're the two easy ones. So then I get them to think, let's look at Angry Birds. How many birds are there? How many types of bricks are there? How many levels are there? You know, What are all the routines we need in the background to be storing stuff? And everyone, all the students contribute. And I just write on the board all these things down, then add the bits I think that they've missed out. Then I ask them, okay, so this bit, the birds flying through the air, what do we need? We need some pictures of birds. We need the animation of it. We need the code to make it fire and that. So let's look at the art department, the graphics department, the design department. How many days do we need of art? How many days work of graphics? How many days of sound? How many days of QA and production? And for every item, we write down the number of time for each item. Then at the end of it, when we calculate this simple looking game, the amount of time, it's really huge. And it's a really good exercise to understand how you construct a game. It's much easier to, it's much more simple to deconstruct an existing game like that than it is to make an original game from scratch, because with an original game, you've got so much more where you're trying things out, and sometimes they succeed, sometimes they fail. If we look at Sociable Soccer, our new football game I'm working on now, we've been through 3 or 4 different ways of doing the menu system, for example, and ways it's presented, and new ideas fall out and other ones come in, and then you go with them again. And the sad truth is the only way to make a great game is to iterate on it and then release it when you must, because you can always improve a game. You know, it's never perfect.
Yeah, it's never ready.
Yeah, exactly. It's ready when the money guy says the money's run out and let's go. Yeah.
And in your seminar, you were talking a lot about the Sensible Soccer game that you did in 1992. And it's the most influential European developed game of all time, according to Stanford University.
Yes, correct.
How did you come up with this idea?
Well, when you get that kind of accolade, they made a list of 10 influential games, and we were the one from the 10 that was from Europe. The rest were from America or Japan. Tetris was from Russia, which you could argue is a bit of it's in Europe. At that time, probably not so much. But really, Sensible World of Soccer, Sensible Soccer was the FIFA of its day, if you like, back in the 90s. And Sensible World of Soccer really took a basically good football game with quite a lot of teams. So the innovation was you put not only like a great football game, but 1,500 teams, 23,000 players, all researched properly. Loads of different game modes so you can play with your friends. You couldn't play online in those days, so that was not there, but you could play all the different tournaments together. And then we also added a career mode where you could kind of trade all the players in some huge world market, like you were a real football manager, working with your chairman also talking to you. So all these kind of ideas which are now commonplace in a lot of sports games, we were the first game to do a lot of these things. Yeah. In this depth, on this level, to make a real sport across the world. And actually the big thing about Sensible World of Soccer is that we added countries like the full league in Poland, the full league in South Africa, the full leagues even in El Salvador. You know, countries that the whole computer game world had ignored forever. And now, when I went to a World Cup of the game about 5 years ago in Berlin, and you've got teams from Croatia or Hungary or wherever, and they wear their national shirt and they go and play our Sensible Soccer game, still even now, 20, however many years later it is, 25 plus. And they do that because we showed a recognition of their country in the old days, and now they appreciate back the game for recognizing their country, which was ignored at the time, you know. So.
Oh, that's nice.
Yeah.
And how did you, why did you want to make a football game? You said that you already did one when you were 5 years old.
Oh, yeah, well, this is a good question again. So when I used to play Subbuteo when I was a child, I would set this carpet up every day, and when my father come home, I would say, do you want to play? Like, he'd just come home from work, and I'm like this. Not every day, but a lot of days, you know. And of course, half the time he would say yes, and half the time he would say no, you know. He never ever let me win. I beat him for the first time when I was 11. He really took me the hard way. But I kind of wanted an electronic version of Subbuteo that you could play even if no one else was there. You know, you didn't need that other person. So with Sensible Soccer, the idea was to create that. You know, Subbuteo had this little card in it, and it said the red team was Manchester United, but it's also Benfica from Portugal, and it's also like the national team from Russia and stuff like this. So I like this idea of this whole international teams in different colours. Yeah, that was really the idea. Like Subbuteo, electronic, for one guy, but also for two if two are around. Yeah. So now really what we're doing with sociable soccer is we're including on top of that online play. So on top of those things, you can now play online against people.
And you were also talking in your seminar that the point of view was the new thing in sociable soccer.
Yes.
Yeah. So what was the new point of view?
Well, this happened by accident. So the game before we did Sensible Soccer was a game called Megalomania, which was a god game. And in this game, you had these little areas of land and you built factories and castles, and you had cavemen running around, and then the cavemen could get design weapons and upgrade to being Romans, and then they could go up to being Victorians, and then people with biplanes, and then people with nuclear weapons and stuff like that. And there are all these tiny little games. Actually, that game was the first game to ever have a tech tree in it. But again, we didn't plan to make a tech tree, we just did stuff. We just did this designing idea, and it turned out by fluke to be the first game to have a tech tree in there. And that's how new ideas happen. And anyway, so towards the end of that development, we wanted to make a new football game because we'd made one other football game before called Micropro Soccer. So I was bored doing the art for Megalomania and waiting for the programmer to finish. And I started drawing footballer versions of Megalomania men that could run around this little world. So when we came to making the football game, we had the footballers, and we made the football pitch in the same perspective as Megalomania world. And then when we saw that done in scale, it was just a very good view for a football game because it gave you a much more zoomed out perspective than you'd normally look at in those days. So you could see when your players were running around the strategy of all the rest of the team and how you could make passes and, you know, score goals. You could see strategically more, so you could think differently whilst you were playing the game. You could think more like a person in that environment on the pitch than other football games. You didn't need a radar because it was zoomed out enough. Yeah, so like all these things, they happen by trial and error. But the key with for a game developer who wants to innovate, you've got to know when you've got something good, and you've got to know when you've got something bad, and that's how the only way you can innovate. You've got to be really hard on yourself about throwing stuff away. Even though you might have worked on it for 3 months and you're desperate to not bin it, you've got to. So, but in that case of that camera angle, it was a good innovation, so we kept it.
And after many, many years, you wanted to do it again with sociable soccer, another football game.
Yes, absolutely. So what's happened in the interim period is FIFA and Pro Evolution Soccer, which are both great video games, football, they've been dominating. And then we've had things like New Star Soccer, which is a more lighter thing on mobile. Obviously, there's management games. But we feel with the advent of esports and with the loads of online play that's going on now, FIFA and Pro Evolution Soccer have been designed really for consoles and for play in your home, mostly with groups of people playing together or playing on your own, but for long periods of time, like 10 or 20-minute matches. That doesn't really ideally fit into an online world where you don't want to have a very long game because, especially on mobile, you can get losing connection, people can drop out and stuff like this. So sociable soccer is totally across platforms, so it's PC, mobile and console. It's done in Unity, which enables us to do that. But yeah, the emphasis is on a very light, accessible, easy, fast-to-play football game, which is not as serious as a FIFA in the sense that it's not so difficult to control. It's not got pictures of Cristiano Ronaldo preening his hair and stuff between before he takes a free kick. It's just action and play and more immediate. Sensible Soccer was like that back in those days. It has similarities to it in a way. It's got the huge world of soccer, but we've added the online play, we've added a card collection game, which is in keeping with modern games. We've added clanning, so you're a member of clans for the team, the clubs and the countries you represent. And it's basically just trying to merge very, very new stuff with old stuff we know works to get it together. So I think it's about time we had something fresh. And actually, on the console and PC market is a bit more crowded for action football games, but the mobile world, there's really not that many games that are established yet. So it's a good time for us to do that, and we've actually signed a deal called Crazy Sports, and they work through a division of China Mobile. So now in China, we've got the game with a CSL license, which is like the Chinese Premier League, if you like. And it's going to be delivered through the biggest mobile provider in China. So this is a good opportunity for us to take the whole game and show it in a totally different, to work it through a different viewpoint from a Chinese market first. And then we're also talking to European and American publishers about the rest of the world as well, and the other platforms. So console, PC, these are all different business deals we can do. So on the business side, my job is to make sure that we've got the IP rights of the game and that we can sell them. So with the Chinese company, they've bought the mobile rights for Asia. Then I'll also look at doing a deal with the company for the mobile rights in the rest of the world. And then the PC and console rights also worldwide. So by doing these 2 or 3 sources of income coming in, that's how the company over time can generate the money. And that's the model we use at Sensible Software. It's a really old model, like make an IP and then sell it out slowly in different places, and then share the profits of that with the development partners, so that everyone is benefiting from the success.
And you also told that you have included managers and chairmen there, so there's more story and drama. And now I see the connection to your drama studies, that there is more.
Absolutely, and our lead artist, Amara, is a great character artist. He's a comic book artist. So we use the strengths of the team. If we didn't have a great character artist in the team, we probably wouldn't have gone this direction, but he can we say like we need 10 managers, and he draws 10 amazing manager characters that kind of look like real managers, but caricatures or chairman characters. So it's great to use his strengths. You know, again, if you're creatively directing a team, you've got to use the strengths of all the individual people in that team, the programmers and the artists and everybody else. Yeah, so it's like drama in a way. It's like theatre production. You use the different skills, the different people, and make sure you use their strengths. Yeah.
So in the future, you're gonna do sociable soccer. When can we play this game? Okay,
so we've got a very primitive early access version already out since October on Steam, and it's just being completed now. There will be a mobile version out sometime next month in China, but you've got to be in China to play it. Then it'll be coming out across the rest of Asia 1 or 2 months after that. And then regarding the advances we're going to do on the PC and the console and mobile in Europe and in North America and South America, the rest of the world, it depends on the publishing deals we're getting. So when you've got a game that's not signed to a publisher, that in theory we can do it free to play, we can do it premium, we can make it focus on the manager side more or not at all, the card collection more or not at all. It's important you have your publishing partner in place to know the direction they want to take it, because at the end of the day, if you've got a good deal, they're paying you in advance, so we're getting it from China, they're putting the money in, and we need to be able to steer the game in the direction they need for their commercial usage. So, you know, I'm an experienced team leader as well as a designer, so I understand the commercial side of it too and where we need to position ourselves. So it's a slow, attritional approach we've got, but we're starting to win now.
Yeah, that sounds really good. Thank you for being our guest tonight. And thank you for watching Fireside Chat today, and see you soon.